Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a books beside my bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. I'm going to talk about the 7 books that I read this week, 2 of which are picture books. So most of you know, if you watched my reset video, that I am also participating in the MS Readathon. Again, I will leave all the links to my donations page and everything down below. All of these books, well, most of them have been added to my MS Readathon reading log, and I'm pretty happy with the fact that I've got 5 books on there already since the start of August, considering this is my reading week from the 29th of July until the 4th of August. Before I get into anything, because I have not personally addressed the issues going on Book Talk in terms of hockey romance and what has gone over in that space, because so many other people have talked about it. And to be quite honest, I am moving between being extremely frustrated, extremely disappointed in people, and outright angry at people's behavior. I am not articulate on that topic. Izzy has a Romance Landia video on it. Jess Owens has a video. There are tons of videos out there with people talking about it, and I am quite frankly getting really frustrated with the fact that authors are having to defend themselves, and people who are romance readers and lovers of the sport of hockey and keep those two spheres separate are feeling the need to defend themselves. I don't think we need to do that, or we shouldn't have to do that, and it's really disappointing. So did I read a hockey romance book this week? Yes, I did. Why? Because I like the genre. Am I going to a hockey game this weekend? Yes, absolutely I am. It is the last home game of the season and the last, live game I'll get to see for my team until next season. Do any of these have anything to do with one another? Only insofar as romance books helped me to see that I had a genuine interest in the sport, wanted to learn about it, and then went out and go to games. Like, that's the link. The two are not the same. So that's my take on it, and that's all I'm going to say about it. And I really hope that some people remember that, people are human beings. So yeah, that's a thing that happened and has just been mind-blowing to see people's reactions, honestly, and the way that people behave. I have grave concerns about humanity moving forward at this point if this is how we excuse our behavior. But anyway, moving on because I need to. I read 2 picture books for review this week. The first one being Last Place Lin by Wai Chim and illustrated by Freydis. This is a really gorgeous new release picture book from Alan and Unwin, who sent it to me for review, so thank you very much to them. I know Wai Chim from her Australian young adult fiction, which is also excellent. This is her first published picture book, and it is a book about resilience and trying your best and never giving up. And it's based on Wai Chim's experiences on a series of Survivor, I think it was Brains versus Brawn, where she was totally out of her comfort zone and had to keep going despite the fact that she is not a very physical person, her words. And this is about Lynn, who is at a school athletics day. She is participating in all the activities, but she's not very good at any of them. She's also not a very athletic person, and she is constantly coming last. And there are some kids who are bullying and teasing her and calling her Last Place Lynn. And at the very end of the day, there is a fun run that everyone has to participate in. And Lynn kind of hides and doesn't really want to do it, but then participates and just doesn't give up towards the end, and people are there supporting her and encouraging her, and she realizes that sometimes it's just about having a go. So it's a really gorgeous book. I loved the illustration style in here. It's really fun and it's got a great message. And then from Hachette, I received a review copy of an older title. This one came out in 2022. This is What to Say When You Don't Know What to Say by Davina Bell and Henry Jean Tapper. This is not a narrative. It's not a non-fiction book. It is simply a book of statements about things that you can say to people who are going through tough times. So it's just things that you can say when you're not sure how to articulate what you're feeling. So if you're having a day when you're not feeling brave, saying things like, I'm not brave enough today, maybe next time. And things like, it doesn't matter what you look like, and I forgive you. Like, really simple statements that we as adults know, but kids may not necessarily know. I mean, it's beautifully illustrated as well. I wouldn't necessarily use this as a standalone read aloud book. I would probably pick sections of it and read it, and it's definitely a gorgeous book to unpack and talk about what's going on in the illustrations and why those words might be important in that moment, and then also extending it to what else could you say. It's very positive, it's very uplifting. I loved it. Okay, so I'm jumping in here just with another clip. Oh my gosh, what have I even done to my hair? I don't even know. But before I talk about this book, I just want to mention that there was something on the author's TikTok page, which I'm going to insert a clip here, about how they've just been able to get their rights back to this book. So at the moment, if you are planning on reading it, maybe hold off on purchasing it until this goes through so that you can support the author. I had no idea this was going on before I read it, because I generally don't follow or pay too much close attention to TikTok accounts, but it came across my feed today. So I thought I would insert the clip and insert a picture of what they said and just maybe keep that in mind. But I do highly recommend the book because it was great. Then I read Three Kings by Freydis Moon. I read a whole stack of Freydis Moon's books back for the Transwrite Readathon, and I've been meaning to come back to this one, and I'm so glad that I did. It is a polyamorous MMM book. You have a trans hero who is known around town as Witch. He is married to a sailor, and his sailor husband rescues a Selkie in the middle of a storm using magic. They save the Selkie's life. The couple are trying to get pregnant and are not having success in that. And as this Selkie stays with them and heals from his injuries, the three of them become very close, and they realize that there is an attraction between all three of them that they begin to explore. And it is a gorgeously written story. It is just wonderful, but it is also a very steamy book. It has some really great hints to magic and mythology, and I just really enjoyed this. It is very short and very readable and just a great read. I also reread Gravity by Tal Bauer. This is the last book that I read for 2022. Absolutely loved it, and sort of kickstarted my hockey romance reading again. This one is just a really wonderful story about two hockey players who meet at an all-star game, and one is straight, one is queer. They get along amazingly well. They click on the ice, they enjoy spending time with one another. And when Bryce makes a move on Hunter, things don't go quite as well. But then Hunter is traded to Bryce's team, and Hunter begins to realize that maybe what he feels for Bryce is more than just a friendship. And the two begin to explore what that looks like and the dynamics for the team. As with all Tal Bauer books, in the third act, there is something very traumatic that happens. One of them is quite significantly injured, and it goes through a recovery period. But the one thing that I will say, and I was thinking about this when I was thinking about the rest of the story, because I happened to see a review that said Tal Bauer knows nothing about hockey. In a lot of ways that might be the case, in that, particularly in the rest of the story, it is a very contained story with a very small group of people, which in an NHL team would not necessarily be the case. There would be more people around, like, we get that. But for the sake of the story and what happened in the rest of the story, that is something that had to exist in that space. It is a fictional story. And this is part of the issue that's been going on in the last week. Fiction. It's not trying to be anything more than that. And the thing that I liked in this is the team dynamics, that found family element, the way that they just joke and tease one another. But when it comes down to it, when something goes wrong, they band together and they dig in. And there is so much joy for the game in here. There is so much hope for this relationship. You need tissues, of course you do. It's Tal Bauer, but there's no third act breakup. There is, a couple experiencing reality in that they both play a professional sport that is incredibly dangerous. And if something goes wrong, it can go horribly wrong, right? So you have to find a way to get through that. And I like that we see that on page. It doesn't have to be fully realistic for us to enjoy fiction. I was really glad I went back to reread this. I am going to put it back onto my spinner wheel to actually annotate, because this time I actually went through and added in more tabs, because I only had like a handful last time because it was the end of the year and I was tired. Now I know better. I also read The Heist by Julie Weaver. This is book 3 in the Team Zulu series, and this was one that I was reading to tick off some of the series that I needed to get up to date with or complete for 2023. This is a romantic suspense story. The heroine is basically an indentured mistress to a man who is described in the book as a monster, and he is incredibly controlling. He has connections to drug cartels and gun running, and she hatches this plan to escape from him because she's caught up in his wake because he's helping out her family. Basically, he bought her. And she knows he's going away and that there are some people coming to do work on his property while he is away. And she also knows or recognizes that perhaps those people coming onto the property are not who they say they are. And so we have our hero who is roped into a heist with his brother. They're all former military. They're all very highly trained. His brother has basically been running this Robin Hood heist ring where they take money from people, where they steal things from bad people and then give it to families who need the support and who have children going through hard times, because the hero's niece in this book was born with a congenital heart defect and had many operations, and is totally fine at the start of this book, but it is mentioned. He reluctantly joins this heist crew for this one job. He normally doesn't do that. And he is in charge of stealing one of the very, very fancy cars. And as he's driving away, he realizes that there is someone in the trunk and that the heroine has hidden herself away in the trunk to get out of the house and make it look like she was kidnapped so that the guy that was controlling her doesn't think that she deliberately ran away. And we kind of go from there. It is very much just a very typical romantic suspense story. Lots of action. It's very action-packed. The heroine gets kidnapped again. There is quite a bit of violence and gun violence, but I did have a really good time reading it. It was a great escapist read. Then I read books 2 and 3 in the Divorced Men's Club series by Saxon James. Book 2 is Platonic Rulebook, which admittedly this was not my favorite one that I've read out of the 3 books so far. So these are both romances. Obviously, Griff's son has just gone off to college and he and his wife have basically been separated for a year, but they haven't told their son. And they've decided that they're going to give him, you know, a semester at college. And then when he comes home at the next break, they're going to tell him that they've divorced. So essentially once they drop him off at college, they come home and they're separated permanently. And Griff is struggling to deal with this. He's, I think, in his mid to late 40s. He's never really been on his own. And to top it all off, he and his wife have a bed and breakfast business, and she has decided that she's going to step away from that. And the only problem with that is that she was managing it and he was managing the grounds, and he really doesn't have a head for the business. However, his best friend Heath has been working with them as the guest liaison for the bed and breakfast, and he knows the business inside and out, so he's there to help Griff along with this journey. And Griff and Heath can only be described as platonic house husbands who don't live together. They are inseparable. They do everything together. Heath realizes that Griff leans on him a lot, and he is caught in this decision of whether or not he needs to move on. He is contemplating taking a job somewhere else before he finds out that Griff's wife is leaving the business. So this is a best friends to lovers story, and it is quite sweet, and as these two sort of figure out their feelings for one another. But yeah, at the end of the day, it wasn't my favorite in the series that I've read so far, but I did enjoy it. I also read Budding Attraction, which is book 3 in the series. This is Ford and Orson's story. Ford is a mechanic and Orson runs the florist. And Orson is a widower. His wife passed away, and at that time, Ford and Orson have lived in the town for a while, but after the death of his wife, Orson upped and disappeared for a while, and we find out that he basically went off the rails. He was sleeping around, he was using alcohol and drugs to sort of numb the pain. And, jump forward a few years, he's brought back to town by one of his best friends who basically tries to help him sort out his life. And he opens up this florist, which is a completely different career for him, and he loves it. He really enjoys this business that he's built. And Ford is very, very intrigued by Orson. And, his intrigue only grows when he, goes into Orson's florist shop and actually meets him and talks to him in person more than once. And it's really cute because he keeps finding excuses to go into the shop and buy flowers just to spend time with him. And the recipients of the flowers become more and more convoluted. It is hilarious. But Ford is sort of a very insatiable flirt. He does flirt a lot with Orson. Orson flirts back because while he claims to be straight, he is also not uncomfortable being around queer men. And so he's just like, yeah, that's fine. We find out that Orson used to be a stripper and, he's quite comfortable in that space, but he's insistent that it doesn't go past flirting until it does. And it was just a really fun, slightly more light-hearted story than I think the previous one. I will say in this one, we do have the content warning for mentions of death of a partner. Ford also has a criminal record for assault when he was a teen. That is all explained in the book. But yes, I enjoyed reading this one. These books are just really light, easy reads, and I'm enjoying reading more of Saxon James's backlist. And the last book that I read this week was another hockey romance. This is Man Candy by Vanessa Vale. This is a special edition that I got from one of the indie romance bookstores here in Australia. So this one is a small town billionaire romance with a hockey hero. So our heroine is Lindy. She is in her mid-30s. Dex is in his mid-20s. And they know each other through their siblings who are together. And Lindy thinks Dex is very attractive. She is an accountant by day. She's writing romance books by night. And he's kind of her muse, which I will say in terms of this particular trope, does not play out the way it normally does when a hockey player is the muse of someone else, because she's not actually writing a hockey romance and she's not actually writing their romance. So that is not part of the conflict in this book, which I was deeply grateful for, especially given everything that's gone on this week. Dex is absolutely gone for Lindy. She thinks he's attractive to look at, but is not really in the market for a younger guy. She wants to settle down. She wants to have a family, and she doesn't think that that's what she's going to get from him. She thinks he's a billionaire playboy. She doesn't know that he plays hockey professionally, and he doesn't tell her that because he just wants to be seen for who he is. And when her house is damaged and she needs a place to stay, he offers up her place, and he spends a lot of time trying to convince her that they would be great together. And it is very steamy. It is very lighthearted. I will say there are a few typos in the book that made me have to stop and go back and read bits and pieces. But at the end of the day, it wasn't the best hockey romance I've ever read, but it certainly wasn't the worst, and it was a great book to end the week on because it was so lighthearted and fun. So I had a good time with this. I had the oops, we woke up in Vegas married trope, and I'm there for that. So it was fun. So those are the books that I have read in the last week. In the comments, I'd love to know if you have read any of them or if you're planning on picking any of them up. If you'd like to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a flower emoji down below. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you're on the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.